True. Let's go to Karma Green, we steady on the rise. Digging truth from ancient scenes, we open blinded eyes. Rhyme sharp like pirates' lines, we break the bondage tight. Kamji speaking revolution, keep the fire burning. Chill drums guide our stride, we march with purpose proud. No more silence, we collide, our voices thunder loud. Politics and history, we stitch them in every verse. From Pharaoh's throne to Yaoundé streets, we claim the Kamji verse.
It's a very good morning, and of course I am coming to you from the beautiful gardens of Serena, Kampala here to speak about the conference, the Africa Reclaimed Pan-African International Conference that will be happening next year. That is between the 8th to the 12th of July. And of course a lot of preparations are being done, but as Africa, appreciating the fact, the heritage, the culture that we have and the rest that comes with that, and of course we look up to that conference. But as all this is being prepared, we just want to understand the feel of what this entails in as far as how people should look up to it. I just want to speak to the organizing team to just paint for us a picture of what really will come through in that conference and why someone should attend. I have a beautiful lady here who is just going to paint for us a picture. And good morning and welcome with Good Morning at NTV.
Good morning. Thank you for having us here today.
Yeah, you're talking about Africa Reclaimed and Pan-Africanism. What is so special about this, and do you think someone should attend?
Absolutely, they should attend. The historic diaspora, those of African descent living outside of Africa, we are the children of those that refuse to die. And after many generations, we have the right to return. And we've decided that we want to return to Africa as a resource to its development. And so Africa Reclaimed is about us looking at solutions. What does the next generation of Africa contribute to the world? The cradle of civilization, but also the next frontier. And so activating our youth, inspiring and motivating their creativity. The historic diaspora wants to be a part of that conversation.
I want to take this time just to speak about why, the fecal brain assimilationist and particularly the Black manosphere are doomed to fail. Now, any of you who are familiar with the fecal brain assimilationists, you will understand that these are Tantonite grifters. They're individuals following the ideology of John Tanton. He was a white supremacist who wanted to create a bunch of organizations like PFER to promote anti-immigration politics in the non-white sectors of America to maintain the white majority. This is like a quick synopsis of why, you had a proliferation of Tantonite movements around 2017, from DOS to ADOS to FBA in 2019. And, Mr. Desha, or O'Shea Duke Jackson, is an individual who likes to cling on to that algorithm, the fecal brain assimilationist algorithm. And interestingly enough, he is in Uganda. Now, Uganda is what is going to host the Pan-African International Conference, right? Now, if we pay attention to, creators like Neferkari Dessalines, he pointed out how Mr. O'Shea doesn't even touch Museveni. Museveni has been a long-standing autocratic ruler in Uganda and has quite been a frequent and loyal ally of the United States, the NATO states, the European Union. He has basically been part and parcel of the extraction campaign and the smuggling of diamonds and precious minerals from Eastern Congo internationally, right? So Museveni has never been a true friend of those who believe in Black liberation. So not only does O'Shea Duke Jackson not cover this, he doesn't want to cover this Pan-African International Conference happening in Uganda. Something that's going to build up, something that's going to enhance, the development and the understanding and the collaboration, in Africa and the diaspora, right? And to correct myself, this is something that occurred, right? So this is something that occurred last year, right? So this Pan-African International Conference is designed to basically build collaboration, build economic development, have strategies when it comes to security, when it comes to investment, when it comes to education. These are the things being discussed by Africans in the diaspora and those at home. And interestingly enough, grifters, fecal brain assimilationist grifters like O'Shea don't want to cover this. Now, if we look forward and we analyze why many Black men follow the fecal brain assimilationist grift, it's because a lot of them are coming from a very, very deeply rooted reactionary core. The Black manosphere in general, and this isn't all brothers in the Black manosphere, but there's a particular type of Black manosphere creator that is more amenable to right-wing grifting, right? this type of reactionary conservative grifting. And what you'll see is that there is a link between those in the manosphere and the fecal brain assimilationists. Many of the founders of the Black manosphere, this is the BGSs of the world, this is the Tia Sons of the world, this is Dr. Tommy Curry of the world, even some of their, other advocates, the Torain Walkers of the world. These are men, these are Black American men who admitted to following Yvette Carnell. They thought Yvette Carnell was a revolutionary. They thought this tool of a white supremacist was presenting good ideas. And clearly they misunderstood the role of Black masculinity throughout American history, right? Even though you had these various petitions to the powers that be for better treatment, especially speaking on the behalf of the Free African Society, going forward into the Delaney period, right? You had certain instances, Henry Highland Garnett's, you had certain deals made with the American Colonization Society, et cetera, et cetera. However, there was still an impulse, a physical impulse to seize what was lost, right? Military directives. This has always been what has raised Black people up from time immemorial till now. All of the different revolts, Gabriel Prosser, Denmark Vesey, Nat Turner, right? The UNIA being a paramilitary unit. The liberation movements on Africa against political colonialism. These were physical force-based movements, right? And a lot of the fecal brain assimilationists, many of them who find themselves within the manosphere, they are not about a direct physical confrontation with the powers that be. They want to beg racists for a check, and it's an absolute insult, right? So if you understand the history of Black people, Black women being brought to America to be breed mares, Black men being brought to America to be CompuServe, you see many of the materialist and structuralist, perspective of the Black manosphere I don't necessarily disagree with. But if you look at that stance, it's clear that you're not going to see any revolutionary potential or revolutionary action coming from those who have tethered their vision and their future to the United Snakes. Now, this doesn't mean that you won't have international groups of Black people, Nigerians, Eritreans, Ethiopians, Somalis, Sudanese, Cameroonians, Ghanaians, etc., taking advantage of the height of the Western economy. As we've already discussed in the previous video, the one particularly against Peak, who is a degenerate. He's one of the founders of Black Manosphere 1.0, and he is a complete degenerate. He's a fecal brain assimilationist. If you were to look at that video, you would see me discussing the remissions and how the remissions of the African continent, the remissions of workers on the African continent back into the continent, or the remissions of workers from the African continent abroad who invest back into the continent is much higher than all of the foreign aid combined, right? So again, you have Black entrepreneurs from a structural perspective, from an international perspective, taking advantage of economies abroad and using that to bolster power on the African continent. So again, when you talk about Pan-African nationalism or Black common sense, it's clearly more fruitful than the fecal brain assimilationist, and it clearly has much more to offer than many of the voices that you see on the Black manosphere. It's clearly one rooted in Black male identity and not rooted in some type of Western bastardization. And you clearly see it achieving results. So, that's all I got on this one. It's just clear that many in the Black manosphere and these fecal brain assimilationists are uninterested in progress on the African continent. So those of us who do value a progressive and developed Black world, just don't even take them seriously. Stop listening to them. Just ignore them and stay focused on that which is constructive. I hope to catch you on the next one. Peace.
It's a very good morning, and of course I am coming to you from the beautiful gardens of Serena, Kampala here to speak about the conference, the Africa Reclaimed Pan-African International Conference that will be happening next year. That is between the 8th to the 12th of July. And of course a lot of preparations are being done, but as Africa, appreciating the fact, the heritage, the culture that we have and the rest that comes with that, and of course we look up to that conference. But as all this is being prepared, we just want to understand the feel of what this entails in as far as how people should look up to it. I just want to speak to the organizing team to just paint for us a picture of what really will come through in that conference and why someone should attend. I have a beautiful lady here who is just going to paint for us a picture. And good morning and welcome with More Morning at NTV.
Good morning. Thank you for having us here today.
Yeah, you're talking about Africa Reclaimed and Pan-Africanism. What is so special about this, and do you think someone should attend?
Absolutely, they should attend. The historic diaspora, those of African descent living outside of Africa, we are the children of those that refuse to die. And after many generations, we have the right to return. And we've decided that we want to return to Africa as a resource to its development. And so Africa Reclaimed is about us looking at solutions. What does the next generation of Africa contribute to the world? The cradle of civilization, but also the next frontier. And so activating our youth, inspiring and motivating their creativity. The historic diaspora wants to be a part of that conversation.
Okay, how do people in the diaspora view the African image, if you may?
Absolutely, it's our source of empowerment. Sometimes we over-romanticize what Africa is. We understand that while we were enslaved, Africa was experiencing colonization. From 1854, during the scramble when European countries first divided Africa and partitioned it based on its resources, to 2024, we also see Africa as a source of inspiration, how resilient we are to still at this time be the source of the world's greatest resources, especially the human resource. The population boom, when we look at COVID-19, unfortunately many areas of the world lost almost half of their population, and yet Africa, it grew, and we continue to serve at the front of humanity in leadership.
Okay, you're talking about Pan-Africanism. Do you agree to the fact the African leaders doing enough to promote Pan-Africanism within the continent or even to the people in the diaspora?
So actually, I think that's what the conference is about. When I think about Professor Maxine Ankra of the Ankra think tank and that team of Ugandans that have been working with her since 2019, when I think about Ghana and their Year of Return campaign, where the diaspora through tourism brought over $1 billion to develop Ghana because the Ghanaian president simply said, I want you to return. I want you to come home. It's Uganda's turn. And so I think that African leadership, they're taking suit. They're noticing that we're ready to come home. And I think that this is fertile ground.
Okay, I want to take for example, Uganda's image. How do you us in the perspective of promoting Pan-Africanism? Uganda, to be specific, how do you rate our image in promoting Pan-Africanism? Let me just sample on Uganda.
Promoting Pan-Africanism is an action word. When we look to Africa, we're looking at the opportunity to return without having a visa restriction. We're wondering why our African brothers and sisters in Congo, or perhaps in South Africa or Ghana, they in ECOWAS countries have a more difficult time coming into Uganda or in East Africa than a U.S. passport holder. We're looking at what is a borderless Africa. There's a lot of work to be done in infrastructure. Why is it easier to bring rice in from China into the Gambia than it is from Uganda or Tanzania, where they grow it on fertile ground? The question is, how do we begin to take a step back from the world and look in to just fulfill the needs that we have amongst ourselves? That is the definition of Pan-Africanism in the future. Not an ideal, not a lofty concept or theory, but an action word, a practice. How do we provide what we need? The Africa we want is us designing a world where we are self-sufficient.
Yeah. Okay, I know the heads of states play a very good, important role when it comes to promoting this, but we're looking up to that day. What will come through? How are you engaging the heads of states to make sure that they appreciate the concept that you have come up with, and on that day to come is what everyone should put focus on?
Well, we want to look to our heads of state for resources, right? Africa is sometimes painted as a child swollen, belly swollen with hunger, and we want the world to know that our heads of state value the diaspora and that they're providing resources for the Africa Reclaimed Conference because they value our presence and they want to help facilitate that process.
And also we want to talk about the people you are looking at targeting to attend that conference. Are they cultural leaders? Do you have also maybe young people coming through on that day?
Indeed, I'm a cultural leader. Again, Kim Poole with the Teaching Artists Institute. We work in 8 countries across the continent, including the diaspora. We use art as a tool for what we call social transformation. We remind our African leadership that culture is the new currency, and it doesn't matter what we build. Until we are in cultural alignment, everything we build will ultimately fail. We have to have the same value system, valuing the human resource. And so cultural leaders absolutely absolutely will be in the audience, but we're looking at the diaspora from across the world, not just in the U.S., where I'm based, but in the Caribbean and CARICOM countries. We're looking at the Dravidians in India, the Aborigines in Australia. Black people are literally around the world, and they're ready to come home to Africa to help build.
Okay, I want to use just 30 seconds in your own words. Let me say your parting shots. Just 30 seconds and we'll take the conversation back to studio.
30 seconds, I'll say we want Uganda to provide a safe space for this dialogue. We want Uganda to stand up and be the example that it has the potential to be, to facilitate Pan-Africanism, to serve in leadership, to allow the historic diaspora to be recognized, not as those diasporians that were once Ugandan, went into the diaspora for resources and then came back, but we want you to see the historic diaspora as partners.
Okay, for time reasons, we will end the conversation here, but thank you so much for really making time to speak to us.
Indeed.
Well, the conversation, of course, rotates around Africa Reclaimed Pan-African International Conference that will happen between the 8th to the 12th of July next year. That's 2024, the Commonwealth Resort in Munyonyo. But of course, we look up the best, and when they talk about culture and the rest, it's what you and I have to be.
Let's go to Karma Green, we steady on the rise. Digging truth from ancient scenes, we open blinded eyes. Rhyme sharp like pirates' lines, we break the bondage tight. Kamji speaking revolution, keep the fire burning. The drums guide our stride, we march with purpose proud. No more silence, we collide, our voices thunder loud. Politics and history, we stitch them in every verse. From Pharaoh's throne to Yaoundé streets, we claim the Kamji verse.